Hello everybody. We are going to discuss data sufficiency questions in this particular video today. Data sufficiency questions are typically from geometry, arithmetic and algebra. So we are going to cover questions from various topics in this particular video. I am sure you will find this video really useful for your preparation of GMAT. So before looking at the questions, let's look at what are the various options for each question. So we get 5 options for each question, and to determine which of those 5 options are correct, which of those 5 options is correct, we have to first study the statements which are given along with the question. So there are two statements which are given along with the question, statement 1 and statement 2. So how do you attempt DS questions is that you first check statement 1 alone, whether statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question or not. If statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question, then you will check whether statement 2 alone is sufficient or not. In case statement 2 also is sufficient to answer the question, then you will take the answer D, right? But suppose statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question, but statement 2 alone is not sufficient. In that case, you will take answer A. Now, when you checked statement 1 and you found, let's say, statement 1 alone is not sufficient, then what you do? Then you check statement 2. If statement 2 alone is sufficient, and of course, statement 1 you have already found that it's not sufficient, then you will take answer B. Now, suppose statement 1 alone and statement 2 alone, they are not sufficient to answer the question, then what you do? You combine both the statements and then check whether you can answer the question or not. If you can answer the question combining both the statements, then you will take answer C, option C. We have already discussed about D, that when each statement alone is sufficient to answer the question. Now, if you are unable to answer the question even after combining both the statements, of course, both the statements alone are not sufficient and they are together also not sufficient, then you will take the answer E. So this is the last option when you are simply not able to answer the question, right? Now let's look at some of the questions and try to solve them. So first question says, stores A and B each sell a certain product at a different regular price. If both stores discount their regular price of the product, is the discount price at B less than the discount price at A? Now here we need to compare the discounted prices at stores A and B, right? So there is a regular price at both the stores, which is different, which might be different from store A to store B. Similarly, there is some discount which also might be different from store A to store B. So we have to calculate, we have to compare the discounted prices at stores A and B. Now let's read the statement 1. Statement 1 says, at store A, the discount price is 20% less than the regular price, while at store B, the discount price is 25% less than the regular price. Now, can you answer this question with the help of statement 1 alone? Let's see. So statement 1 says discounted price at A is 0.8x, where x is the regular price at A. So we have assumed that x is the regular price at store A. So discounted price would be 20% less than x, which is 0.8x. Similarly, discounted price at B would be 0.75y, because it is 25% less than regular price, and we have assumed that y is the regular price at store B. So discounted price would be 25% less than y, which is 0.75y. Now, if you compare 0.8x and 0.75y, can you tell which is bigger or which is smaller? No, we cannot tell, because we don't know the value of x and y. So we cannot calculate the difference using statement 1 alone. So this statement alone is not sufficient to answer this question, because we don't know the values of x and y. Now let's try second statement. Now second statement says that at store A, the discounted price is $7 less than the regular price, while at store B, discount price is $8 less than the regular price. So if we write it, what is the discounted price at A? It is x minus 7. And what is the discounted price at B? It is y minus 8, right? Where x and y are the regular prices at A and B, as we have assumed here. Now again, can you answer the question using this information. Again, you don't know x and y, so you cannot calculate the difference between the discounted prices using this information only. Now, if we combine these two statements, then what happens? If we combine 1 and 2, then we can write that 0.8x, so discounted price at A is 0.8x. This statement say discounted price at A is x minus 7. So if we equate 0.8x and x minus 7, then the value of x can be calculated. You don't have to calculate the value of x. All you have to determine, yes, x can be calculated. Don't waste your time in calculating the exact value of x. Similarly, this statement 0.75y would be equal to y minus 8. So y can also be calculated. Again, don't waste time in calculating the value of y. Now, if x and y can be calculated, then you can easily calculate the discounted price at A and B and compare which is bigger and which is smaller. Or you can use even these two equations, you will get the same value. You can again compare which is bigger or which is smaller. You don't have to do all these calculations. Once you have determined x and y, you are sure that you can answer the question. So you can answer the question using both the statements. Your answer would be C, option C. Now let's look at the next question. In the parallelogram shown, what is the value of x? And they have given two statements here. Now in parallelogram, what happens that opposite angles are equal. So angle A and angle C would be equal, and angle D and angle B would be equal, right? So angle A and C, so x and z, they are equal. So x is equal to z. Similarly, angle B and D would be equal to y. So y degree is the value of angle D. So value of angle B would also be y degrees. Now, what does the statement 1 say? Statement 1 says y is equal to 2x, twice of x. Now, with the help of this statement, can we answer the question? Can we calculate the value of x? Now, this means that angle B and angle D. So angle B and D, they are equal to y, right? B and D are equal to y, and y is equal to 2x. So angle B and D are equal to 2x. A and C, we already know that they are equal to x, right? Now we know the value of A and C is equal to x, and B and D is equal to 2x. So all the four angles we know in the form of x, right? And the addition of all the four angles is 360 degree in a parallelogram. So the value of x can be easily found out, right? X plus 2x plus 2x is equal to 360 degrees. You can calculate the value of x. You don't have to calculate. All you have to determine, yes, you can calculate. So statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer this question. Now let's check statement 2. Statement 2 says x plus z is equal to 120. Now please remember, once we have determined that statement 1 alone is sufficient, we will not tick option A. We will still check statement 2, right? Now once you determine whether statement 2 can answer or cannot answer, then only you will tick the answer. So let's see whether 2 can answer or not. So x plus z is equal to 120. Now we know that x is equal to z. Here it is given that x is equal to z because this is a parallelogram. So we can say that x plus z or x plus x is equal to 120. So the value of x is 60. So straight away we can calculate the value of x using statement 2. So statement 2 alone also is sufficient to answer the question. So when both the statements alone are sufficient to answer the question, our option is D. So we will take the answer D. Now let's look at the next question. So is the product of Z and P negative? Is ZP negative? Now, when will the product be negative? When one of the numbers is positive and the one of the numbers is negative, because positive into negative is equal to negative. Both the numbers cannot be positive, both the numbers cannot be negative. Otherwise, the product would be positive. So one of the numbers has to be negative and one of the numbers has to be positive. Now let's evaluate first statement. First statement says P into Z raised to power 4 less than 0. Now Z raised to power 4 is always positive because it's an even power. So whether Z is positive or negative, it doesn't matter. Z raised to power 4 will always be positive. So P has to be negative if this statement is true, right? So if this number is positive, then this has to be negative. Then only P into Z raised to power 4 is less than 0. But we are not sure about Z here. Z may be positive or negative. Now we have determined that P is negative, but we don't know whether Z alone is positive or negative. Z raised to power 4 is always positive, but we are not sure about Z. So statement 1 alone cannot answer whether Z into P is negative or not, because to determine Z into P, we have to find the signs of Z and P, right? And here we are able to determine that the sign of P is negative, but we don't know the sign of Z. So we cannot answer this question using statement 1 alone. Now let's try statement 2. Statement 2 is P plus Z raised to power 4 is equal to 14. Again, Z raised to power 4 is going to be positive, as we saw here, but we are not sure whether Z is positive or negative. Again, the same problem, we don't know the sign of Z. And here we are also not sure whether P is positive or negative, because if Z raised to power 4 is greater than 14, then P would be negative. If Z raised to power 4 is less than 14, then P would be positive. So P can take positive as well as negative value. So statement 2 alone also cannot answer the question. Now, if we combine these two statements, then what happens? Then still the problem remains same. We cannot determine whether Z is positive or negative, because here, if you combine these two statements, it remains Z raised to power 4. Now, if Z raised to power 4 is always positive, but Z alone is positive or negative, we cannot determine using both the statements also. So in short, this question cannot be answered. So we have to tick E. Now, next question is, what is the area of the triangular region ABC? The product of BD and AC is 20. And the second statement is X is equal to 45. Now, what do we know about area of the triangle? Area of the triangle is equal to half into height into base, right? So height into base, half of that is the area of the triangle. Now, first statement says the product of BD and AC is 20. Now, BD is the height and AC is the base. If we know height into base, the product of BD and AC is 20, then we can easily calculate the area of triangle, right? So area can be easily calculated using statement 1 alone. Now let's say whether statement 2 alone is sufficient or not. So here X is given as 45 degrees. So this is 45 degrees. Now with this information alone, we don't know any of the sides. What is the side length of the side, or we don't know what is the height, what is the base. Then with the help of only one angle, we cannot determine the area, right? So here statement 1 alone is sufficient. Statement 2 alone is not sufficient. So our answer would be A, right? So statement 1 alone is sufficient. So statement 2 is not sufficient. Statement 1 is sufficient. So answer is A. Now let's look at the next question. So this question says each week a salesman is paid a fixed amount equal to $200 plus a commission equal to 4% of the amount of his sales that week above $900. So if he is selling more than $900, then only he gets a commission which is equal to 4% of the excess amount above $900. Now, what is the total amount the salesman was paid last week? So there are two statements given, but let's first decode what is given here. Now, what is given here is that amount paid to salesman is equal to $200 if sale is less than equal to $900. So up to $900, he is paid only $200. It's a sort of salary for him. But what is his, what if he sells more than $900 in a week? Then amount paid to the salesman is equal to $200 plus some commission, and that commission is difference of his sale and 900 into 4%, right? If sale is greater than $900, where X is his total sale for the week. So whatever is the total sale for the week minus 900. So basically this is calculating his excess sale over 900. Whatever he has sold more than 900, on that he is getting this 4% commission. So the amount which he gets is equal to 200 plus X minus 900 into 4% in case sale is greater than $900. Now let's see what statement 1 says. Statement 1 says total amount the salesman was paid last week is equal to 10% of the amount of his sale last week, right? So amount paid to the salesman is 0.1x, right? So X is the total sale for the week. Then he is getting 0.1x or 10% of the sales, which is 0.1x. Now, since he gets minimum $200, we know that he will definitely get $200, right? So his sales has to be equal to or more than $2,000 to meet this condition, right? So if he is getting 10% of his total sale, then he is definitely selling more than $2,000, because even if he say, let's say he does sale of $2,000, he is getting 10% of it, which is equal to $200. And let us say if he is doing a sale less than $2,000, then also he will get $200. So now this statement says that he is getting equal to the 10% of the sale, which means he cannot do a sale less than $2,000, because the moment he do less than $2,000, his actually payment is more than 10%. Let us say he is doing a sale of $1,500, but he is still getting $200 as his minimum payment. So $200 is actually more than 10% of $1,500, right? So for this condition to be true, that he is getting 10% of the amount of his sale, he has to do a sale of at least $2,000. Then only he will have this condition satisfied. Now if he's doing a sale of $2,000 or more, he is getting paid as per this equation. Okay, so 200 plus x minus 900 into 4% is equal to 0.1x. Now with the help of this, you can easily calculate the value of x. You don't have to do the calculation, but since you can calculate the value of x, which is his total sale of the week, then you can calculate the amount paid also, 0.1x. So 0.1x will be the amount paid to him. So you can answer the question. So statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question. X can be calculated and amount paid can also be calculated. Now let's look at the second information which is given, second statement. So here X is equal to $4,500. So last week he totaled a sale of $4,500. Now if he is doing this much of sale, $4,500, then what would be the amount he will get? Then it's very simple. This is the amount he will get: 200 plus 4,500 minus 900 into 4%, right? This is the amount which he will get. Okay, so we can use statement 2 alone to answer this question again. So both statement 1 and statement 2 alone can answer the question, right? Now, so we will take what option? Option D. So let's move on to the next question now. This question says, in triangle ABC, point X is the midpoint of side AC and point Y is the midpoint of side BC. If point R is the midpoint of line segment XC and if S is the midpoint of line segment YC, what is the area of triangular region RCS? Now it's better to draw a triangle here because there is so much of information given. So we just draw the triangle and mark whatever is given. So this is a triangle ABC. X is the midpoint of AC as is given in the question. Y is the midpoint of BC, R is the midpoint of XC, and S is the midpoint of YC. This is what is given. And RS, we have to calculate the area of RCS. This small triangle, this area is what we have to calculate. Now here a lot of geometry concepts would be applied to solve this question. Now, first of all, we should understand that this, how much is this RC? So this X is the midpoint of AC and R is the midpoint of XC. So RC is actually 1/4 of AC. So this RC is half of AC, which is 1/4 of AC. Similarly, this SC or CS, this is also 1/4 of BC because this is midpoint of BC and this is midpoint of YC. So this particular line segment is half of BC, half of BC, right? So this is 1/4 of BC. Now, it is clear that RS, this line segment RS, is dividing AC and BC in the same proportion, which is 1:4, right? So these two lines are getting divided by this particular line segment in the same proportion. So this by this is equal to this by this. So whenever this happens, we can safely say that RS is parallel to AB, right? RS is parallel to AB. This is Thales intercept theorem. Now, when RS is parallel to AB, triangle ACB is similar to triangle RCS. So these two triangles, this bigger triangle and this smaller triangle, they are similar to each other. And in similar triangles, what happens? All three corresponding sides will be in the same ratio. And here the ratio is 4:1, right? 1:4 or 4:1, the way you want to look at it. So bigger triangle into smaller triangle, bigger triangle is to smaller triangle would be 4:1, or smaller to bigger triangle would be 1:4. So here corresponding sides will be in the same ratio. Now in similar triangles, one more property is that ratio of the areas is equal to ratio of squares of corresponding sides, right? So ratio of these two triangles areas is equal to the ratio of the squares of corresponding sides. So area of triangle ACB bigger triangle divided by area of RCS smaller triangle would be equal to AC square divided by RC square, and AC by RC is 4 is to 1 if you can get it from here. So this is equal to 16, right? If you put the value of RC as 1 is to 4 AC here, then you can easily get this value 16. So the ratio of these two areas is 16. Now let's move on to the first statement. The first statement says that the area of triangular region ABX, this ABX is 64. This triangle ABX is 64. Now area of triangle ABS X is actually half of ABC. Why? Because this X is the midpoint. So BX is the median. When BX is the median, then it is dividing this bigger triangle into two equal triangles of equal area. So if ABX is 64, this total ABC would be 128. ABC's area would be 128. Now once I know the area of this triangle ABC, then I can easily calculate the area of triangle RCS in putting in this equation, right? So with this we can calculate the area of RCS. Although we don't need to calculate, we know that we can calculate it. So we can say that statement 1 alone is sufficient. Now let's see what happens with the statement 2. The length of one of the altitudes of triangle ABC is 6. Now length of altitude of ABC is of no help for us if we don't know the length of the corresponding base, right? So this statement alone is not sufficient to answer this question. So our answer would be A, statement 1 alone is sufficient. Now if you see that there are a lot of geometry concepts which are going into this particular question in answering this particular question. So I would recommend that you refer to the video on geometry concepts, lines and triangles to build the concepts. So there is a video on geometry concepts in this particular YouTube channel, concept building classes. You can find it easily in this channel, and you can just refer to this video so that all these concepts can be clear. Why this is parallel, why these are similar, and why what is this theorem about corresponding sides and areas and all, why median divides this into two equal halves. So all those things can be cleared there. So this is an application of geometry, so just go through that video and learn the concepts. So let's move on to the next question here. Question number 7 is, on a certain trip John averaged x miles per hour for 5 hours and y miles per hour for the remaining 6 hours. What was the average speed in miles per hour for the entire trip? So what is the average speed? Average speed is equal to total distance by total time. Here, what is the total distance he has traveled? Total distance is he has traveled x miles per hour into 5 hours and 6 miles and 6 hours into y miles per hour. So 5 into x plus 6 into y is the total distance which has been traveled. And what is the total time which was taken was 5 hours plus 6 hours, which is 11 hours. So total distance traveled is 5x plus 6y, and total time is 11 hours. Now let's see what is the first statement say. 5x plus 6y is equal to 280. So now 5x plus 6y's value is given. So if I put the value of 5x plus 6y here 280, then I can easily calculate the average speed, right? So statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer this question. Now let's look at the second statement. Y is equal to x plus 12. Now with the help of y is equal to x plus 12, I can't calculate the value of 5x plus 6y, right? So in place of y, I can write x plus 12 here, but still since I don't know x, I can't calculate the value of 5x plus 6y. So this doesn't help us find the value of 5x plus 6y. So statement 2 alone is not sufficient to answer the question. So our answer would be A, which is statement way alone. Statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question. So this was a pretty easy question. Now let's move on to the next question. What is the total number of coins that Ethan and Tom have? Well, Ethan has 50% more coins than Tom, and total number of coins that Ethan and Tom have is between 21 and 28. So they have E and T coins respectively. Ethan has got E coins and Tom has got T coins. So we have to calculate E plus T. What is the total number of coins they are having? The first information is E is having 50% more coins than Tom. So E is equal to 1.5 times T. So if I want to calculate E plus T, then I can put this value of E as 1.5T and this becomes 2.5T. But since I don't know the value of T, so I don't know what is E plus T exactly, right? So statement 1 alone is not sufficient to answer this question. Now, if we check the statement 2 says that the number of coins that they have is between 21 and 28. So E plus T lies between 21 and 28. So it can be 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, or 27. Now, now if you see that this question, there are so many values, 22 to 27. So again, we don't know whether what value of E plus T would be. So this alone is also not sufficient to calculate E plus T. Now, if we combine 1 and 2 statements, then what happens that we can say that E plus T is 2.5T. So we will write 2.5T here, and this is in between 21 and 28. This will help us calculate the value of the range of value of T, right? So 2.5 will go here, 21 by 2.5, 2.5 will go here also, 28 by 2.5, and we calculate this, then T lies between 8.4 and 11.2. Now T has to be an integer because it is a number of coins. So T can take what values? 9, 10 or 11. So it cannot take 8.5, 8.6. It can take either 9, 10 or 11. It has to be less than 11.2. So it can take only these three values. Now let's see what all values can E take, right? So E is 1.5T. So when you put the value of T in this equation, then E can take the value 13.5, 15 or 16.5. Again, E also has to be an integer. So this 13.5 and 16.5 are not possible. So only value which is possible is 15, and corresponding value of T would be 10, right? So for the value 10, for T's value as 10, E's value was 15. So this 10 and 15, they are corresponding values of T and E. So if E is 15, T is 10. Now with the help of this information, we know both E and T, so we can calculate E plus T, right? So with the help of both the statements together, we can answer this question. So our answer would be C, right? Both the statements together can answer the question. Now let's look at the next question. How many students in the senior class take both German and Spanish? In the senior class, 200 students take German and 150 students take Spanish, and there are 300 students in the class. Now, this is a typical Venn diagram problem, right? So there are some students in the class, some study one language, some study another language, some study both the languages, some study none of the languages, right? So let's draw the Venn diagram here. So typical Venn diagram would be that this is the circle representing German language students. This is the circle representing Spanish language students. The area where both the circles intersect, that represent the students who have taken both the languages. And there might be another section of the class who has not taken any of these languages, right? And the total of this is equal to German language plus Spanish language students minus both the language students plus neither of the language students, right? So this is the total in this particular Venn diagram situation, right? This is a general formula. Now what happens, now let's see what is given to us. So first statement says German 200 students, Spanish language taken students are 150, right? So we know the value of German and Spanish here, but both is what we have to calculate. So we don't know how many students have not taken anything and how many are the total students. So we don't know how many total students are there and how many speak none of the languages. So we can't answer this question using statement 1 alone, right? Now let's look at the second question. Second, total number of students are given, which is 300, right? Now we can't allocate these 300 students in German in Spanish. So we don't know how many students have taken both German and Spanish. So this statement alone is also not sufficient to answer the question. Now if we combine both the statements, then what happens, right? If we combine both, then we don't know how many students speak neither of the languages, right? So here, if we put the value of whatever values we know, so total students is 300 as per statement 2. German speaking and German students who have taken German are 200 as per statement 1. Students who have taken Spanish are 150 as per statement 1, minus both plus neither. Now here we have to calculate both the language students, but we don't know what is the value of students who have taken neither the languages. So we cannot calculate this value, right? In fact, we can't determine how many students speak both the languages, as it can be minimum 50 and maximum 150. When will it be minimum 50? When the students, when this particular section, when will this be equal to 50? When none of the, neither of the students is, when this value is 0, right? When all the students have of the class have taken either German or Spanish, or right, uh, then minimum students speaking or taking both the language would be both, would be 50, and maximum can be 150 when Spanish student, all the students who have taken Spanish, they have also taken German, then my common students would be 150, right? So it can lie between 50 and 150. You have understood why it is minimum 50 and maximum 150. Maximum would be the number, minimum of these two would be the maximum, right? So all Spanish students might also have taken German, so 150 students who have taken Spanish may also have taken German. So students who have taken both the languages, 150. So maximum number of students can be 150 who have taken both the languages. And why minimum is 50? Because if we see that 200 plus 150 is 350, so 50 students, so max total class strength is 300, and 200 plus 150 is 350, so the difference is 50. So minimum 50 students would be there who have taken both the languages. If none of the student lies here, right, in this section, who has not taken any of the language, so minimum 50, maximum 50, we can't determine exactly how many students have taken both the languages. So our answer would be E. We can't determine, right? This is a very interesting question. Just spend some time to understand this question, because this is a very good conceptual question and can actually test you, because some of the students might, eagerly tick answer D, answer C, that both the statements can give the answer together, if they don't consider this neither thing, that there are students who have not taken any of the languages. If you don't consider this, you can easily calculate the value of this, right? It is straight away 50. But actually there are students, there might be students who have not taken anything, right? Now let's move on to the next question. Question number 10 is Bob, Roger and Hunt each purchased a new house. The average price of the three houses was 250,000. What was the median price of the house? Right now, first statement is the Bob's house is $200,000, and the second statement is Roger's house is $250,000. Now, average price is given is to be $250,000, right? So let's say the price of how Bob's house is B, Roger's house is R, and Hunt's house is H. So B plus R plus H divided by 3 is equal to $250,000. So B plus R plus H is equal to $750,000, right? Now statement. Now what is median? Median is the middle number when numbers are arranged in ascending or descending order. So when you have been given some numbers, you just arrange them in any particular order, whether increasing or decreasing order, and then you pick up the middle number, that is the median, right? So here there are three numbers, so second number would be the median number. Now statement 1 says B's house is $200,000, right? Now if you know the value of B's house, can you calculate what is the value of Roger's house and Hunt's house? No, you can't. With this alone we cannot calculate median, because we don't know the value of other two houses, right? So statement 1 alone is not sufficient. Now second statement says Roger's house is $250,000. Now this $250,000 is equal to the average price of the three houses. Now this is interesting, right? You might say that again, I don't know what is the value of H and B, the two houses, so I can't answer. No, you can still answer, because this is a unique number, this is an average number, this is equal to the average number. So Roger's house is equal to the average value, right? So if price of Roger's house is equal to average price of three houses, then the price of other two houses can be either same as average price, right? So all the three houses are $250,000, so the average becomes $250,000. In that case, if you if you arrange these three houses prices, the prices of these three houses, $250,000, $250,000, and $250,000, then middle number will always be $250,000, right? So you know what is the median. Or there might be another case that all three prices are not same, right? Then one number would be bigger than $250,000, and to bring the average back to $250,000, the other house's price would be less than $250,000, right? Now both the houses cannot be more than $250,000. If that is the case, then average will not remain $250,000. Similarly, both the houses cannot be less than $250,000, because if that is the case, then average will not remain $250,000. So one house has to be bigger than $250,000 and another house has to be less than $250,000. In that case, if you arrange three houses, these three numbers, then 250,000 will again be in between. So your median will always be $250,000 here. So in both the cases, your median remains same. So you can answer the question using statement 2 alone. So your answer is B. Remember guys, this is very interesting. You might miss out if you don't catch this thing, that the price is same as average price, right? So if you've caught this and you understand this concept, then it's easier for you to answer this question option and take option B. Now the next question is, the hypotenuse of a right triangle is 11 centimeter. What is the perimeter of the triangle, right? So let's draw this triangle. This is a right angle triangle with right angle at B, and hypotenuse is given as 11. Now what is the perimeter of the triangle? Now perimeter is what? AB plus BC plus CA, the sum of the three sides, right? Now in right angle triangle, we also know that hypotenuse square is equal to height square plus base square. So AB square plus BC square is equal to hypotenuse square, which is AC square, and AC is given is to be 11. So 11 square is 121. Now statement 1 says area of the triangle is 25. Now area of this triangle is how much? Half AB into BC, right? Half AB into BC, half height into base. That is the area of the triangle. You can get it in geometry concepts if you want to learn the formulas of height, learn the formulas of triangle, area of triangle. It's very easy. It's half height into base. So half AB into BC is equal to 25. So AB into BC is 50. Now with the help of these two equations, AB square plus BC square is equal to 121 and AB into BC is equal to 50, you can easily calculate the values of AB and BC. And once you have calculated the values AB and BC, this is already known to you, you can calculate the perimeter. So statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question. Now second statement is AB is equal to BC. Here AB is equal to BC. Now here also you can calculate the value of AB and BC. Why? Because AB and BC are equal. So if you put this AB and BC, AB is equal to BC in this equation, you can easily calculate the value of AB and BC. So AB square plus AB square is equal to 121, or 2AB square is equal to 121. So you can calculate the value of AB, and whatever is AB would be equal to BC. So you can calculate the perimeter of this triangle with using statement 2 alone also. So our answer would be D. You can answer the question using both the statements alone. Now let's move on to the next question. Can a certain rectangular sheet of vinyl be positioned on a rectangular tabletop so that it covers the entire tabletop and its edges are parallel to the edges of the tabletop, right? So let's see what they are trying to say. So let's say this is the tabletop, rectangular tabletop, on which there is a rectangular sheet which needs to be kept, and we have to find out whether that vinyl sheet is covering this tabletop or not, right? So if the vinyl sheet is kept like this, let's say this light blue color is vinyl sheet, it is kept on this table like this, then it is covering the whole table, right? But if there is a vinyl sheet which is kept like this, right? So if the, let's say the width is slightly less than the table's width, and while the length is too high, it's much more than the table's length, but width is slightly less, then this is not covering the whole table, right? So it can extend to any length, but if the width is not sufficient, it is not covering. Similarly, if the width is too much but length is too short, then also it won't cover. So now let's look at how to solve this question. So to cover the tabletop, length and width of vinyl sheet has to be greater than or equal to the length and width of the tabletop, right? So these lengths should be, this length should be equal to this length, and this width has to be greater than the width of the tabletop, right? Individually length and width have to be bigger. Now first statement says tabletop's length is 30 and width is 70. Now first statement doesn't talk about vinyl sheet, right? So sheets dimensions are not given, so we don't know anything about vinyl sheet, so we can't answer using statement 1 alone whether this will cover tabletop or not. So statement 2 says area of vinyl sheet is 2400, right? So when the area of, now in statement 2 vinyl sheets area is given, but nothing, they are not talking about tabletop at all. So here again we don't know anything about tabletop, so with this alone we can't determine whether sheet can cover tabletop or not. Now let's combine these two statements and see what happens, right? If we combine 1 and 2, while length and width of tabletop is known, here length and width of tabletop is known using statement 1, but we don't know the length and width of the sheet. So statement 2 doesn't tell you the length and width of the sheet, it is telling you the area, right? Area of the sheet is given 2400. Maybe vinyl sheets length is more than tabletop's length, but width is less than tabletop's width, or vice versa. Now this 2400 can actually be 40 into 60, right? So if it is 40 into 60, then 40 is bigger than 30, but 60 is less than 70. Or 2400 can be actually 20 into 120. So 20 is less than this, but 120 is bigger than this. So the moment sheets width is less than tabletop's width, it can't cover. Or maybe it is in this way that, you know, the sheet can cover the tabletop also. So this, because this is 2400, right? So there can be examples where both the things, length and width, are greater than 30 and 70, right? So using a statement, both the statements also we cannot answer, because we don't know whether the sheet will cover or not. Its length might be less, its length might be more, or maybe just you know, enough length and width to cover this whole sheet, right? So its length is slightly more than this length, and width is slightly more than this width. That is also possible. So we are not sure whether it will cover or not, so we can't answer this question using these statements, right? So our answer would be E. But interestingly, if in this question the area of the sheet was given to be less than tabletop's area, so what is the tabletop's area? 30 into 70, 2100. So tabletop's area is 2100. If your sheet's area would have been less than 2100, then combining 1 and 2, we could have said that vinyl sheet will not cover tabletop for sure, right? So if it is less than 2100, area of vinyl sheet given is 2400 here. But if it would have been less than 2100, let's say 2000 area is given, then we are very sure that it will never cover vinyl sheet. At least one of the things will be less than, at least one of the length or width would be less than the length or width of the tabletop, right? But in case of 2400, you are never sure. It can be 30 into 80 also, right? So 30 inches wide and 80 inches long. The moment it is 30 into 80, it will cover this tabletop. But there might be a case where it is 20 into 120, where it is not covering the table. So 2400, in case of higher area, we are not sure. But if the area was less, then we are very sure that it will not cover. But here it is 2400, so our answer would be E. We cannot determine. Let's move on to the next question. What was the revenue that a theater collected from the sale of 500 tickets, some of which were sold at full price and remainder at a reduced price, right? Now let X is the number of tickets sold at full price F. We are saying that the full price is F. So number of tickets sold at the reduced price would be 500 minus X, and we are saying that the reduced price is R. We don't know the values of F, R, and X, but these are the equations which we know. Now revenue, how much revenue would the theater earn? Would be X into 5, number of tickets sold at full price, into full price, plus 500X into R, right? So the number of tickets sold at reduced price into reduced price. Now first statement says that number of tickets sold at full price was 1/4 of the total number of tickets sold. So total number of tickets sold at full price is equal to 500 by 4, right? 1/4 of the total number of tickets. So it is 125. So the value of X is can be calculated using this. But can you calculate the revenue with this value of X? If you can put this value of X, but you don't know the value of F and R, so you can't calculate the revenue with this alone. Let's use the statement 2 now. Now statement 2 says full price is 35. Now using only this statement, F equal to 35, you can put the value of F here, but you don't know the value of X and R again. Again, you can't answer the question, answer the You can't calculate the revenue with this alone. Now, if we combine both the statements, we again don't know the reduced price. Now, here we know the values of X and F. X and F is fine, but what about R? You don't have the value of R. So you again can't calculate the revenue even after combining both the statements. So your answer would be E. The question cannot be answered using any of the statements or both the statements together. Next question is two points A and B, which are not shown here, lie to the right of point M on this line L. What is the ratio of the length of BA to the length of MB? This is what we have to calculate. So BA is to MB is what we have to calculate, right? Now, first statement says twice the length of MA is 3 times the length of MB. So twice of MA is equal to 3 times MB. What does this mean? MA is equal to 3 by 2 MB, or MA is equal to 1.5 times MB, which means MA is greater than MB, right? So this MA is greater than MB. So where will A and B lie? If we know that MA is greater than MB, so A would be on the extreme right and B would be in between, right? Because MA is greater than MB. So A would be after B. And once we have located the position of the points, we can easily say that MA is equal to MB plus BA. So our first statement can tell us MA is equal to MB plus BA. Now, instead of MA, you can also write 3 by 2 MB, right? So this is given that 2 MA is equal to 3 MB. So MA is equal to 3 by 2 MB. So instead of MA, you can write 3 by 2 MB. So if you calculate this, if you solve this, you can find MB by 2 is equal to BA. So with this, MB by BA can also be calculated, or BA by MB can also be calculated. So BA by MB, if you take MB here, you can calculate the value of BA by MB. Now with this alone, we can calculate the ratio, right? Now let's look at the statement 2. B is between M and A. So now here it is given that B is between M and A. Okay. Now with this alone, we don't know exactly what is the ratios of these line segments. So we cannot answer this question using this statement alone. So statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question. So answer is A. So guys, don't confuse. So first exhaust this statement A, all the information, and then move on to statement 2. But because otherwise, if you read this and you find that B is between A, because this B is between M and A can be determined using statement 1 alone also. So here we were able to determine where is B located. So statement 2 is also doing the same thing. So this is redundant information when we combine these two, right? This is redundant information given in statement 2. So statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer this question. Now let's move on to the next question, which is the last question of this video. What is the value of 4x square minus 3x plus 1 when x plus 1, x minus 3 is equal to 0 and x is equal to 2, which is statement 2. Now, first statement says that x is equal to minus 1 or x is equal to 3. So we have to just solve this equation and find the value of x. Now, with two values of x, we will get two values of this expression. So we cannot solve the problem, right? We cannot tell what is the value of x of this x expression using statement 1 alone. But if you use a statement 2, x is equal to 2, then if you put the value of x equal to 2, you can actually get the value of this expression, unique value of this expression. So we can calculate the value of this expression. So statement 2 alone is sufficient to answer this question. So this is very easy. You have to tick answer B. So that is it for this video, guys. So if you like this video, I would request that you please subscribe this channel, share it with your friends and the people who are preparing for GMAT. Like this video, comment on it if you have any doubts or any queries, and press the bell button to get the notification as and when any new videos are posted on this channel. Thank you and happy learning.